Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest is a mental health advocate and part-time live show host, podcaster and content creator, and also a variety gamer with a full-time job on top of all that. She has lived with post-partum depression, major depressive disorder, anxiety, C-PTSD. She has left an abusive partner and has had family trauma situations to deal with. This superstar mum is raising 2 kids as a single mum. She has a 9-year-old who has Tourette Syndrome and a 16-year-old who is transgender and struggles with anxiety. Living in Texas, together, they just do their collective best to get by with all of the politics and real dangers that comes along with being different these days. All she wants to do is help others feel less lonely and encourage people to seek help when it feels the hardest, but that they need it the most. As someone who has personally struggled with mental health challenges, she recognises the importance of having a safe place to discuss these issues openly and honestly. Her goal is to create a supportive community where individuals can share their experiences and feel a sense of comfort knowing that they are not alone. Through her show and podcast, Mumma Fox Fire hopes to break down the stigma surrounding mental health and provide a platform for people to share their stories. She believes that by creating a supportive environment, individuals can find the strength and resources they need to manage their mental health challenges. Ultimately, her mission is to promote greater understanding and compassion for those who are struggling with mental health issues. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, welcome to the podcast, this little old podcast, Mumma Fox Fire. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
I can't wait to delve into everything because, well, let's face it, you've had a quite roller coastery life so far, right? Mm-hmm. So look, I touched on a few things in the intro and stuff. So let's let you talk about who you are and what you've been through, because it's been a hell of a journey.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, I'm not sure where you want to start, but like I had a typical childhood, I air quotes here, normal childhood. Of course, there's always some stuff that you go through in childhood and everything, but up until I kind of reached adulthood and had my first child in 2006, I was 21. I had him. I had a lot of birthing trauma and I was a single mother, and kind of went a few years with just me and him. And then in 2011, got married. I had entered into this relationship and everything was good and gravy. And then got married and it kind of like flipped a switch where all of a sudden it wasn't okay. Lots of emotional abuse and all of that. And so I'm just going to give you like high level and we can go into wherever you want to go into in a little bit. But 2013, I had my youngest and had some medication issues. And I had postpartum depression after I had him. And then in 2014, we were trying to have another baby and I developed pelvic organ prolapse and had to have a complete hysterectomy. And so I had to kind of all of a sudden come to terms with, okay, you had postpartum depression. Now you're fine. try to have another baby. Oh, by the way, you can't. Sorry.
But then also, but also when that happens, right? And did they remove everything?
So I kept my ovaries. So because I kept my ovaries, I didn't go through menopause.
Because otherwise that would have been a nightmare. Yeah.
Right. So they took uterus and tubes and left the ovaries. So I still have all the hormones, which is great and kind of not great at the same time, because like I have a cycle. It's very clear that I have a cycle, but I don't bleed. So there's no like actual, I don't know how graphic you want to get on this,
but it's like there's all the benefits of going through menopause, right? As in, but with PMT, what's that about?
Right. So I still seem to cycle with my oldest, and when he's on his period, it's like I get all the emotions. I'll get like a zit, around my cheeks or my nose or whatever, and I'm like, oh, it must be that time. Because it's the only indication that I have, or I'm in a super bad mood, and I just don't know.
Well, I'm menopausal, and I'm in a super bad mood a lot of the time. So just be glad you still got your ovaries. That's all I can say, because mine are shutting down. And it's a whole world of interesting cycles that I'm taking at the moment. But hey, it's all good. It's all good. Now you mentioned your son has a cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So just in case people actually misheard and went, oh, she meant daughter, right? So explain what the situation is there as well, okay? Because
absolutely. My oldest was assigned female at birth, raised as a girl until kind of teenage years. We started kind of navigating some sexual orientation and gender identity types of conversations. And eventually he came out to me as trans and uses the pronouns he, him. We went through several different iterations of different kinds of pronouns. But that's kind of been where we are. And we went through several different names and everything too. So that's assigned female at birth, but he, him pronouns and masculine name,
Yeah, and and I'm assuming dressing masculine and hair okay, so here we go. We're going into, but not getting surgery at them. Well, you're in Texas, right? So that's a whole
I'm in Texas,
that's a whole nother different issue completely. And potentially I should get you back on to talk about the difficulties living in Texas in the situation you're in, because it just blows my mind that in this day and age that could even be happening. But okay, so maybe a time for another podcast, I think, on that one, because that would be we
could do a whole podcast just on that one.
Exactly right. And I would love to, right? Because there are certain challenges with dealing with the situation that you've been in, and also people external to your family unit, right? And so, we'll delve into watch this space, everyone. We will be bringing Mumma Foxfire back for another episode. But okay, so they removed your womb and all of that stuff, not to get into like really gory details. So that was traumatic as well. That must have been traumatic, because that is it. No option for children.
Right. And that's, of course you can adopt and that kind of thing. But whenever I did, when I was having trouble getting pregnant, I had to go through having a hysterectomy and everything. And I don't know that my pelvic organ prolapse, I don't think that caused me not to be able to get pregnant. There were other issues. I went for testing. Everything was fine on my end. My husband at the time refused to get testing. So even if it was something with him, like, we'll kind of never know. It just didn't work out, is essentially how I look at it now. Like, it just didn't work out. But around that same time, I found out that he was having two affairs, or that he was having an affair and had an affair prior. Yeah. So we went through therapy. I stayed, quote unquote, for the kids, which is a terrible idea. Went through all of this stuff, and then we had a stalking situation with one of his affair partner's husbands. It was really scary. That ended.
Oh my God, stalking on him,
stalking our family. No, stalking our family. Right. So he would send me texts and say like, nice shirt or whatever. And he'd say what color my shirt was.
But it's not your fault your husband was having an affair with his wife.
Right. Yeah. But what he was trying to get me to do is he was trying to encourage me to encourage my husband to kill himself. Yeah.
Wow.
And that only ended when he finally went to jail. And that could be a whole episode in and of itself, working with
dealing with stalkers. Oh my God.
So many 911 calls, right? It was so many 911 calls and so many different police reports, and like had to give my phone to the sheriff and all this stuff. So yeah, we went through that situation. And then, so that brings us up to probably about 2016, maybe early 2017. And then in 2017, I know this is like just one thing after another.
We've still got another 6 years to go.
Tell me what you've been through. I know. I know. So in 2017, my grandfather went missing, and you can't see it like if you're listening, but I have an axe tattoo for him. He is a retired fireman. And so I use this for suicide awareness. And then I have another tattoo over here. It's a handlebar mustache for my other grandfather. I use that for men's breast cancer awareness because he died to breast cancer. But so in 2017, my grandfather went missing. That case is still open. But in 2017, because of that traumatic situation that my whole family was going through, I became much closer with my sister, who I hadn't been super close with as an adult, and started gaming again. And it was I started gaming again for the first time since meeting my husband as a way to kind of cope with that disappearance. And then, one more year in 2018, I found out about another affair, and
were you still with the husband? Oh my God. Yeah, so you'd gone through two, then you found out, and then, so he finished those two, and then this is a new one that, okay.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah. So he swore up and down it was only an emotional affair. Well, I found out a year later that it wasn't. It was a physical affair as well. And I finally said, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. I had been working with a therapist because of my grandfather's disappearance, and she had helped me come to realize that I was in a situation of domestic abuse. It took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that that's what I was in. So in 2019, I filed for divorce. He refused to leave the house. Fortunately, he finally left right before New Year's. Then 2020 COVID hit. So, right. And so I'm like 3 months later, COVID hit, and I'm like, thank God. Oh my God.
Could you imagine?
That would have been terrible. Yeah, that would have been awful. I'm just really glad that he was out by then. So I did file for divorce. So that is 2019. That's also when I started noticing symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome, and my other grandfather died to breast cancer. And then in 2020, I was supposed to have surgery for carpal tunnel syndrome, but they considered it elective. So I was still in a lot of pain because of that. And then 2021, I was finally able to have surgery for carpal tunnel syndrome. And then in 2021 also, 2021 is also the year that they finally finalized the divorce, because the courts were so backed up here.
Same here.
Because of COVID. Here. So it took a couple of years to get that completely finalized. And that brings us to 2022. I moved back down to be closer to my family, and here we are.
And then they passed laws and make Texas, everything really hard for everyone to bloody live with. But
right, yeah.
So wow, like there's bereavement and uncertainty and pain and mistrust. There's lots of emotions within all of that, right? There's, it sounds a bit drastic, but like there's losing your womanhood or your femininity to a certain extent. All like, okay, so like how, like I talk to you and I would never know, right, that all of this has gone on. You are happy. You seem sane when I speak to you, right? And, you are. You seem to have just got on with it. And like, and I know a lot of people who would be listening to this podcast, and I've been through it as well myself, like are going through shit, to put it in a blunt way, right? So like, how did you pull yourself through it? Because life is a series of ups and downs, right? But you seem to have had a lot of downs in the last few years. How do you get yourself through it? And also, you've got to pull the kids through it as well.
Mm-hmm. So I chalk it up to a few things. Number one is therapy. I mean, I couldn't have gotten through a lot of what I got through without my therapist. So she helped me through just so much and helped me navigate through a lot of things especially after my grandfather's disappearance, and then kind of helped me come to terms with some of the situations that I was in and everything. The other one is just my therapist at one point said, like, you're the most high functioning, most depressed person I've ever treated. And it's like, yeah. And I kind of said, yeah, because I have to be. I've got 2 kids that rely on me. I don't have a choice. And she was just like, okay, well, if you had a choice, it's like, yeah, I don't think I would still be functioning. And so it's one of those things that just, I deal with a lot of stuff through dark humor. I deal with a lot of stuff through just kind of fake it till you make it sometimes. And it sucks to say that sometimes that is what it took for me, but it is what it took for me. I don't have to fake it so much these days, which is great. I mean, it's such a weight off to not have to feel like, okay, I just have to get through this next thing. I just have to function through this next day. And then we'll start over again, start that timer over again. Lots of therapy. That was the main thing that got me through it. And I had a bad experience with therapy before.
Oh, wow. Had you?
And I'm so glad that I gave it. Mm-hmm. The first time I went to therapy was after the discovery of my ex-husband's affairs, the first time. And the therapist that I saw then was just complete shit. And can I swear?
Yeah, I just swear a little while ago, so it's okay.
Okay. All right, good. So the first therapist that I went to was complete shit. Like all she would do, she would be like, well, essentially, buck up, buttercup. And she would give me some worksheets. Keep in mind, like, I was not the one who had affairs. I was the wounded party in this situation. And her answer was just like, well, do these worksheets and we'll talk about it next time. And she was very dismissive of almost everything. And she was really just like, are you even trying to deal with this? Like, are you even trying to forgive him? Are you even trying to, instead of trying to figure out, like, so I think I went to her 4 or 5 times and then I stopped going.
But you went, but what was he doing?
So he was supposed to be going to therapy. He went to therapy, and we went to couples therapy as well. And we went a handful of times, and he legitimately said, I just can't win at therapy. We're not going anymore. And therapy is not like a let's go fight and win situation, but he felt like everyone was saying, that he needed to do some work and he wasn't willing to do the work. So we stopped going. Right. Yeah. We did do an affair recovery program, and it was very good. And we did stick with that, but it was less him having to do work and it was more us having work to do together.
Yeah.
So he wasn't having to work on just himself.
I've been in that. Look, at the end of the day, right, I'm very open-minded to anything and everything, right? But I have been in a similar situation to you, right? And there are little red flags within those situations.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. So my ex-partner was working in a foreign country, in a war zone, basically. He wasn't in the army, but he was doing logistics and things like that out there. And I discovered he'd had an affair when he was international, as we call it. And he'd come home for 3 weeks and then he was going back out. And his words, massive red flag, right? His words to me on the night he left, I said, well, what's going to happen regarding this affair and stuff? And he said, I won't see her because you don't want me to see her, right? And I went, that's not actually. So obviously then I was on the hunt for 2 weeks of going like, well, what's going on? What's happening? It's like, and then my view is, right, if they ain't willing, if they're not like falling apart and going, oh my God, I don't want to lose this. This is insane. This is a really stupid decision I made, right? Drunk or sober, it doesn't matter, right? It's a stupid decision and they really want to work at it. Then they will walk over hot coals for you to actually, but when they're going, well, I don't want to do counselling, or, oh, I won't see the person because you don't want me to see the person. You're sort of sitting there going, no, do you know what? And so I think that experience made me learn very quickly, as I'm sure you did, that, do you know what? You're worth better, that you're worth more than that. And all these promises and all these words, they go, oh, I'm never going to do it again. And you just need to trust me. And I'm honest with you. And no, rubbish, right? It's about building trust again, right? So these people, and like it's men and women, right? I'm not going to just say it's blokes, right? Because women do the same thing as well. Need to just seriously consider whether that relationship is what they want to be in. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, me too, right? I went through therapy. I've been through therapy twice now for longish periods of time, because the affair side of things was really painful for me. So I had to deal with it. I had to build myself up again. I had to deal with that. But then I've now had to deal with the separation from my son's father, and him having an addiction and things like that. So I've had to understand where that is, heal myself and deal with forgiveness, I suppose, and then deal with co-parenting and narcissistic alcoholics. So, it's, yeah. So, okay. And I agree with you. So how did you get the kid? Because did the kids go to therapy?
So my oldest is in therapy. My youngest has been to therapy one time, just as a mental health check-in. I plan to do that with him kind of every year and just say, okay, go talk to this therapist and just talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I always tell the therapist, this is just, I'm treating it like it's a doctor's appointment, an annual brain physical, aside from his neurologist, because he has Tourette Syndrome also. So he does have a neurologist and like all these extra doctors and everything. But my oldest is in therapy mainly because of all the political climate and just the hardships that come with being transgender. I mean, that's something that is difficult. And then he has anxiety as well. So there's just a lot of stuff that they can benefit from going to therapy, that sure, I could do all this research and talk to them about it, but hey, teenagers don't always want to talk to their moms.
No, I agree. And sometimes just having somebody, I'm 51 and there are times that I maybe don't want to talk to my mum. I mean, I love my mum to bits, right? But like there's stuff that I sort of go, well, I don't want to worry her because, I'm in another country and she needs to just and deal with her stuff. So,
right.
And I can understand why your eldest is anxious, because living in Texas, I would be anxious. I would be anxious, and I'm not transgender, gay, having an abortion or anything of those things. So,
but you're a woman.
That's
bad enough.
Yeah, that's true.
That's honestly that's enough to make it terrible to live in Texas.
Wow.
To not be a straight white man, anything other than straight white man.
Hello.
But like we said, that's probably a whole other podcast to talk about.
I don't even know where to start there, because that's just like, and hey, look, we do have our straight white men here who have the egos and believe they need to take care of the little woman and things should be as they are here. But thankfully we are getting a lot more other people who are open-minded and broad. So look, what 3 bits of advice would you give to somebody who is at the moment going through, let's face it, a shitty time, right? Or a challenging time. What 3 bits of advice would you give to somebody?
Number 1 is therapy. I mean, that I can't stress enough how much help therapy can be, whether you think that you need it or not. Find a good therapist and don't be afraid to fire them if they're not working out. If you get a shitty therapist, like I had at first, find a different one until one clicks with you. That's the second therapist that I had. She was the best. Like, I wish I had had her the first time around. I think that things would have been much different, much better. So number 1 is definitely therapy. After that, find things that you can do for self-care. Because for me, Whenever I was going through therapy, my therapist would ask me like, what are you doing for self-care? And I'm like, huh? And so we kind of got to the point where I had a couple of things that I did. One of them was gaming, and then one of them was doing nail art. And I don't do nail art anymore. Like my nails are just plain painted, but
if you could see, they are just plain.
Still paint them and everything. Shocking. Yeah. But these are my natural nails too. So it's like something I still do take the time to take care of them, but I don't do as much nail art as I used to do. But find something that you can do for self-care. And then I guess the third one would just be to find a community, whether that is your family around you. You know, I lean heavily on my dad. I lean heavily on my sister. And then I have this community in the gaming world and with my own podcast that has sprung up, and we really support each other. There are online forums that you can find if you can't get people in person. If you're a churchgoer, then you can probably find somebody at your church to talk to. Like there's all kinds of options out there, but find your tribe essentially and just do what you can to let them know what's going on, because people can't help if they don't know that you need help. So I think those would be my three: self-care, therapist, and find your tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk to me a little bit about this gaming malarkey, right? Because how old were you when you found gaming?
So I actually was a gamer from the time that I was a kid. We didn't have a game system at home.
So much younger than me then.
So in the late 80s, early 90s, we never had a game system in our house at all. We had a computer eventually that had some games on it, but we never had like an Xbox or a Nintendo or anything like that. But my cousin did. And so every time we go over there, I would play things like Vigilante or Mortal Kombat and that kind of thing. Then my best friend had a gaming system. We played things like Yoshi and like all these other things.
Zelda was my favorite.
I really enjoyed those. Oh, Zelda's good. My youngest is playing Zelda right now. He's playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, I think.
I discovered that you can get Zelda for the Wii. We've got PlayStation. We have got a PlayStation, but there's a Wii here. Mind you, my son's always on his iPad playing games, Roadblocks and all of that malarkey. Wow. Okay. So you had been a game, but they were all like, I'd played games in the 80s and 90s, right?
Right. Yes, it's not the same. No. It's definitely not the same anymore.
Oh, no, it's great.
I started playing online games kind of in the early 2000s. And I played them up until I met my ex. And when I met him, he wasn't a gamer. He didn't understand gaming. And he would make all these snide comments like, oh, that it's stupid. You're just wasting your time to play this game. And I don't understand why you're doing that. You could do so many better things with your time. And like all these little comments that just made me be like, I guess it's not worth it. So I stopped playing. And when my grandfather went missing, I mentioned that I became much closer with my sister. She's always been a big gamer. And so she kind of got me back into, all right, well, we're talking. Do you want to play a game together? And so we would play something together, or we would be talking to each other while we're playing games separately. And it just kind of took off from there. Wow. So I refound my love for gaming because of my sister and because my grandfather went missing. So, there's always a silver lining.
And you game on a like live gaming website, don't you? Mm-hmm. That's like,
so I stream on Twitch.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I was thinking, I thought it was called Twitch, but I wasn't 100% sure. But you live stream on Twitch, don't you? So if anyone wants to go out there and watch, Mumma Foxfire, she's on Twitch. Gaming away, because I've watched all of you guys twitching and gaming and all of that malarkey. And
it's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it definitely,
because then you can interact with people live. And like last night we were doing a jigsaw puzzle together. It's not all people playing Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite, but that was the big thing for a little while. Everybody was playing Fortnite. But it's one of those things that if you can find a game that you enjoy playing, even if it's putting together a jigsaw puzzle on stream, there are people who will do that with you. And it's just another way to connect into a community.
And how does that help you though? How does it like?
So after my grandfather went missing, I really used it a lot as an escape, because I just needed to not have some of the realities that were going on around me anymore for a little while. And now I use it so that's how it started. It was kind of like, I need an hour where I'm not thinking about the fact that my grandfather's missing. I'm not obsessing over the web sleuths comments. I'm not obsessing over like all of this stuff, the new information we got from the sheriff, or the new information that came out from my cousin, or whatever it was. So I just needed an escape. And from there, it kind of got to the point where I was being open enough about my mental health that other people were being open about their mental health. And so that's kind of where this idea of, well, let's talk about mental health while streaming, and then we can all have this conversation live and learn from each other. And so that's how I started my podcast. I was talking about mental health with other people, and I started doing these interviews, and it just kind of took off from there. So now it's not necessarily an escape for me now. It's actually more work for me now, but it is very much a community connection, and a way for me to stay in touch with people that I care about, and to meet new people and expand that social circle, which is really important.
And I suppose you've all got the same like focus, haven't you? You've all like on there playing games, and you enjoy what you're doing. So it is like having a football club. It's a gaming club.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people play draft football or whatever it is, and I play other games.
Yeah. No, which is cool. So let's talk about the podcast then, because like, how did you come up with starting the podcast?
Mm-hmm. So the podcast is called Even Tacos Fall Apart, and I started doing, like I said, I was being open about my own journey. I was mostly streaming to just friends at the time that I knew in real life. And so I was being pretty open about what I was going through, the struggles that I was going through. And then somebody would bring up like, well, have you ever experienced OCD? I haven't. I mean, I've been through a lot in my life, but I've been very fortunate that I haven't experienced a lot of the things that are out there to experience. So that isn't something that I struggled with. And I was like, well, I don't know. Let me do some research and we can kind of talk about it. But I want to understand what you're going through before we have a real conversation about it. And so from there, then I was like, what if I got an expert to come on and talk about like ADHD? I think my very first guest was about ADHD. And that just kind of took off. Like that was just like, okay, now I'm going to bring on an expert every week and we're going to talk about a different subject. So this week we talked about thriving with disabilities with someone who has struggled with disabilities for over 20 years. And the week before that, we were talking about like safety and education and in tenancy and like landlords and all of this, like real estate and everything. So, and we've talked about hypnotherapy, like all these different things that I wouldn't even have thought to research on my own. But B, that people are interested in, if you want to see if hypnotherapy is for you, and you have questions, well, now I'm providing a forum to say, come ask your questions of an expert while we're live talking about it. You don't have to reach out and wait for a response. You can just come and ask while we're here.
So it's live, is it? It's a live podcast, right? Mm-hmm. So people can log on or can they send you in questions? So if you've got do they know if you've got episodes coming up that they might be interested? Yeah. Okay. God love you. Okay. And then you get the person on and then they just answer the questions and talk a bit about obviously the subjects and stuff like that. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this always interests me because obviously I have this podcast, right? Why a podcast? Yeah. Why didn't you just go, I'm going to speak to somebody and then I'm going to write a blog or why even do anything, right? Like what pushed you? What was the catalyst and what pushed you in the direction of podcasting? Yeah,
so I think for me, a blog is too much work.
Well, it's writing, isn't it?
Podcasting is a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. Don't think that a podcast is easy to do if you want to do it, with any sort of planning. There's lots of planning, lots of writing. But I can't even keep up with my Instagram. So how am I going to keep up with a blog? But for me, one of the main reasons for starting it was that I very strongly believe. So the predominant theory about my grandfather is that he killed himself. And because that's the case, I am a very strong believer that if he had if he had understood that it's okay to get help for things that you're going through, it's okay to be honest with people around you. It's okay to talk about this stuff. He was very, very like masculine, macho man. And he was very sweet also. Don't get me wrong. He wasn't toxic in any way, but he was of the generation where you don't talk about shit that you're going through. You just don't talk about it. You shove it all down and you go on vacation, you know? And it's just like, that's it. That's all you do. And so I strongly believe that if the stigma around talking about mental health hadn't been there and he had been able to get some help, that he would still be here with us today. And just that thought is enough to keep me going. But then I've also had, after I started having these conversations on Twitch, and I wasn't doing them as a podcast also after the live stream. Now I do them as a podcast after the live stream as well. And I had enough people reach out to me and say, I learned so much from that. I want you to know that I really appreciate it. And let me tell you, everyone who is listening, if you appreciate something that a content creator does, whether that is a blog or a podcast or a live stream, tell them. I can't tell you how much that meant to me. Just to have people say, what you're doing is valuable. That was so, even years later, I still remember those people who said that. And it's like, that's one of those things that really keeps me going even now. And just the community engaging around these conversations and asking stuff in the Discord community that we have. They ask questions ahead of time. People on Twitter ask questions ahead of time in the comments whenever I post that we're going to have a certain guest or a certain topic. And just that engagement is like, it's enough. It's enough to keep me going for sure. And I think if I had known more about emotional abuse, I think that I would have gotten out of my relationship sooner as well. So it all just comes back to, had there been more information out there, had more people been talking about this, so much could have been better, different than it was for me.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody who's been in a domestic violence situation as well. In fact, it's funny because Mother's Day, we got together. There was a group of single moms. We all got together with our kids and we had a barbecue. And
I love that.
Mainly because our exes wouldn't have done anything for us. So we were like, well, let's do it for ourselves. And so that was what we did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And so we got together. The kids know each other from school and stuff like that. So that's great. But we were talking about domestic violence situations. And I'm hoping to get this lady on the podcast if she'll come on. But we both agreed, both me and her agreed, that emotional domestic violence is destructive, right? And I don't think people realize how destructive it is on par with physical violence, right? Physical violence, Absolutely. You can see, right? It's a bruise, it's a scratch. Well, sometimes you can see it, right? Sometimes you can see it. Yeah. A lot of the time you can't as well, right? But it is, and I said that if my relationship had been a physically violent relationship, I would have got out of it earlier than I had, right? Earlier. So much sooner.
100%.
So much sooner, because the emotional violence is surreptitious and so subtle at times that you as the individual having that emotional violence done to you, it almost justify the abuse. And it's, it's difficult to deal with, really. And you also think, well, it's never going to happen to you, right? And I've spoken to all different women from all different lives, managers, execs, people who, hold and manage other people, right? Who you would think have it together, they've got decent salaries and they've been through domestic violence. It's not just the, it's not just the people who are on, what's the word I'm looking for? Social payments and don't have a job or whatever, who come from like drug affected, addiction affected backgrounds, who are prone to this. So it's, it's interesting. It's scary as well, because there's so much out there. I think I was reading a book to my son regarding the fact that 1 in 4 children come from an addiction-based family. So I got him to calculate that out. Now, I don't know what country, or is that globally or whatever, right? It could just be Australian. I don't know. But I got him to calculate that out and say, how many people are in your classroom? And so he said, and I said, and it worked out that 5 of his classmates potentially could come from a addicted family, a family with an addiction or some sort of issue regarding being addicted. And so that sort of blew his little mind a little bit, because he went, wow, there's another 5 people who are in a similar situation to me. So yeah. So look, wow. There's so much we could delve into. So
I know we could probably do like 4 more episodes on some of these.
So what can people do if they know that somebody is actually suffering, right? Because so many situations, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be affairs, whether it be bereavement or whatever, right? What can people do to help somebody in that situation? How do you give them a hug?
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of things. If you know someone who is going through a hard time, be willing to listen to them and don't be really judgy. Be willing to provide a safe space for them to express what they're feeling without saying, oh, you shouldn't feel bad about that. Like, everybody's got it so much worse than you. Give them the space and just say, I hear you. And listen, active listening, empathetic listening. Those are skills that you can practice, and then you can use them when you know that someone is suffering. The other one that I would say is to ask the other person how you can support them. So many people, we actually just talked about this whenever we were talking about disabilities, but when you know that someone is suffering, or you know that someone needs help, we as humans love to just say, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do this. It is so much more effective if you say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Do you need me to cook you some food? Do you need me to go to the grocery store for you? Do you need me to just listen? Do you need me to contact someone else for you? Do you need me to research a domestic abuse hotline? Do you need me to do, what can I do for you? Give them some options if they can't think of anything. But ask them how you can help. Don't just assume what I want to do is what they need. So offer support in a way that they would like to have support, the way that they want to be supported, and just don't be judgy. I think those are the 2 things.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And it is, and keep pushing regarding the support stuff, right? So it is just going, do you need any help? Because 9 times out of 10, people will just say, oh, no, you're all right. I'm fine, right? Yeah. And they might not be. So it's about keep pushing. And you're right. Come up with things that you might be able to help them out with by saying, hey, can I take the kids off you for a couple of hours even, right?
Exactly.
Something like that, right? And, can I go, can I take the kids off you so you can go do shopping? Or can I take the kids off you so you can go just walk on the beach? Oh, I say walk on the beach because I got a beach beside, well, not beside me. That would be nice. That would sound like I'm living in a multi-million-dollar house. But no, it's like a couple of Ks away. But no, definitely. So look, where can people find you online? Because one, you've got your podcast, so I'm assuming your podcast is on every platform it possibly could be on, right?
Yes.
And it is called Even Tacos Fall Apart.
Yes.
Even taco. And I have to say, go on the website because you'll find a secret taco recipe, right?
That's all you found.
I did. I found it, right? I found the secret taco recipe. It is vegetarian people who eat meat, but I'm sure it can convert to chicken or whatever. But I was so chuffed, right? I was so chuffed because I was like, it's vegetarian, right? And being vegan, I was like, well, I can change some of the things that aren't like vegan-y-ish.
Yes.
But so I was like, oh, I'm going to try that.
And it's really good too. It is phenomenal. Like it is. I am not a vegetarian. I am not a vegan. I eat meat. And I would pick those tacos over a meat taco any day.
Okay, so I have to, but on my shopping list, I have got mushrooms, right? Because there's mushrooms in this, people. Yes. So if you hate mushrooms, you're going to hate this taco. But maybe swap in like, I don't know, tofu or chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to try them because I found it and went, oh, okay, because we have Taco Tuesday here because my son plays soccer. Oh, well, my son plays footy, Australian rules footy, and so he's got training. So Taco Tuesday's easy, right? Happy days. So,
yes.
So, I pre-cook everything and do it all. Sorry, this is a single mum situation. And then I just have to dish it up and go, there you go, buddy. Shove a bit of lettuce on it. It's all good. Happy day. Heat it up in the microwave. Done. So yes, I'm definitely I will feed back to you on the recipe.
Well, I love that you found the recipe because
great.
there's not like a direct link that you can go
to read it
to find it. You have to go and look. You have to go look for it. So tacosfallapart.com is the website. The podcast is called Even Tacos Fall Apart. It's available everywhere that you can find podcasts, unless they were going to try to get me to pay to have it on there. So then I didn't do it. But all major podcasting platforms.
You're on YouTube as well, aren't you? So you're on YouTube.
I'm on YouTube. Yep. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere that I can be on socials as Mama Foxfire.
Yeah. Not as in
That's
tacos
MOMMA Foxfire. Yeah.
It's not the tacos fall apart thing. It's your Mama Foxfire handle, as it were.
That's right.
Yeah. God love you. I love it.
And there's links to all of those on the website too.
You should get T-shirts printed up. Mama Fox on fire. But
there you go.
There we go. Another line for your little sideline. Look,
I like it.
Cool. So, thank you. I loved having you on here. We're definitely getting you back to talk about the trans situation and the situation
I would love to.
In Texas, because maybe I shouldn't go there. Maybe people in Australia aren't too worried about the Texas situation, but they should be, because it's horrendous and it could happen to us here. But it would be good to find out how you actually dealt with your daughter saying that she is now a he and all of that comes with it. Because these are things that are happening to people as we speak. And I really don't want the subject to be taboo. And I really want to go out there and help people in those situations, right? And the kids. They're kids at the end of the day. These are our children.
Exactly.
Our children who should... none of us would want our kids to be put in an unsafe situation, right? And this is what they feel and their view and how they are, right? So nobody should dictate how a person should be or do or whatever. I could recognize myself as, I don't know, a horse, right? I'm not sure that I am, but I could, right? And so who cares? I'm not harming anyone. It's
not hurting anyone.
It's not hurting anyone, okay? I'm not influencing I'm just being me, Claire the horse, right? So, it's good.
Yeah.
So I don't know why a horse came to my head, but anyway.
Hey, it works.
But, let's be human beings, right? So final question before we get you back.
Sure.
What book would you recommend to my listeners and why?
So I am a huge reader. I'm also on Goodreads as Mama Foxfire, if you want to connect there. I'm a huge reader, but I don't read a lot of like nonfiction books. So my question back to you is, what kind of fiction book? Because I can give you, like, if you want one, a young adult one, if you want one about grief and loss, you want one about fantasy, crime fiction, paranormal
one that
romance,
you've recently read. What have you? If you were to sit there and go, wow, I know I can think of one. Which would be The Jigsaw Man, written by Paul Britton, which is he's a criminal psychologist in the UK. So it's fact, right? But it's such a good book, right? So there we go. We'll put that one on the list. But like, what one? And I read that years ago.
Overall, really good books.
What one have you read that you've gone, oh my God, would read that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I really think Under the Whispering Door is an excellent book. And that I would have to look up who it's by, but that one does cover grief and loss. It's fabulously done. If you're not wanting to read something about grief and loss, which is completely understandable, I would say The Witch's Heart, which is Genevieve something, but The Witch's Heart is an excellent read as well. Or like, there's so many. Okay, so like there's Middle Game, and there's American Gods, and there's
I like reading. I like reading a series of books, right? So Wilbur Smith to me, like, and his series of the South African family. I can't think of the blooming name now because I've got a few that I've got to read through now. But like, it goes from these two brothers who are in South Africa who grow up, and it then goes all the way through the generational family. And I'm just like addicted to these books. Yeah. That's my addiction. But
I understand.
Oh my God, Wilbur Smith. I used to, when I was younger, James Herbert, and James Herbert is a horror writer, and Stephen King. Oh my God, used to love him. It's like flick. Yeah, no. So so awesome. Fantastic. Look, it's been such a pleasure. I'm going to call you Mumma FF. Because Mumma FF, right? Mumma FF, it's been such a fantastic pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much
for having me.
No, we will
this was really
back.
Lovely, and I'm happy to come back anytime to talk about anything. I know that there's a lot in my life.
Oh, no, it's good. It's good. Look, and like, I think your view is the same as mine, right? If we're out there and we're talking about this stuff and it helps just one person, happy days. Happy days. That's what we want.
Absolutely.
That's what we want. So I'm going to let you get on with your evening, and I'm going to get on with my day here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.